Hi everyone, it's BritSimon. So I thought I'd record a video for you to just go through the DV 2024 progress as it stands at the moment. Xarthisius has just updated his website this afternoon, and so I thought I'd show you those numbers, and we can go through those numbers and talk about what that means. So if you're a DV 2024 case, you're probably going to be interested in this video. Because we are getting towards the end of the scheduling, towards the end of the year, and so these numbers are going to get kind of important now. So let's have a look at the numbers for a start. Okay, so actually, if I move me over there, let me just put me over there. That might be better. Yeah, that's probably better. Okay, so this is the latest situation with the DV data. Now remember, this data comes from the CEAC system. Xarthisius grabs the data from that system. So this is official data presented in an unofficial page, right? But we know absolutely it's trustworthy and it's accurate. In fact, in the past, we've had better accuracy and understanding than the government's own staff and lawyers. So we know this is good data. Okay, so let's just go through the data as it stands. So far, we've had a total of 29,960 visas have been issued, with a further 599 in a special status called administrative processing. When you see administrative processing on your case, it means the visa is being printed right now. And typically you'll get your visa within a few days. It's part of the printing process. So I always explain to people, you can pretty much assume all of those numbers, the 599, are issued. That means that they've issued about 30,500 visas so far. And in theory, we would have about 25,000 more visas, about 24,000. Now, they won't get to 24,000 because adjustment of status cases don't appear in the CEAC system. So there's about 1,000 visas issued each year, sometimes a bit more, sometimes a bit less, which are issued on adjustment of status, which means the people were living in America on some sort of non-immigrant visa and adjusted status from that non-immigrant visa to a green card through the DV lottery. About 1,000 people a year do that. So we know that, let's say if they get to 54,000 in CEAC, that really means they hit the capacity at 55,000. That's essentially what it means. Another quick explanation here. The government is not required to hit the 55,000. They are not penalized if they don't hit the 55,000, right? And so what they used to do, what they've done in the past, up until the last 2 years, was they tended to underuse the visas and not use all of them. And I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do the same sort of thing again. So anyway, we've got about 30,500 people that we consider to be issued. In 221G, there are nearly 5,000 people. Of the 5,000 people there in 221G, I would certainly expect a bit more than half of those, let's say 3,000, will become issued over the next few weeks and before the end of the year. And it could be 4,000 of those, right? So that would take us up to about 35,000 visas issued or will be issued from people who are already interviewed, okay? 3,500 people globally have been refused, final refusal. And so those people, their journey won't continue any further. There are 20,000 people in ready status. Now, ready status is basically for the interviews arranged, already arranged, typically in the future. In some cases, these ready cases will be cases in the past, which I take to mean that the people didn't show up for their interviews, right? I call them no-shows. So if you have a case which the interview took place in February or March of this year, but it's still in ready status, that means it's a no-show. And there are quite a number of those 20,000 cases in that status. But the government has just scheduled around about 8,500 people for the month of August, and they're not done scheduling yet. We expect to get some more 2NLs before the end of the month. They've scheduled a lot of people for August. There's a lot of people scheduled for July, and we're not in July yet, right? So there are almost 8,000. So we've got about 16,000 people in July and August together scheduled, okay? So that 20,000 number is all sort of future cases. So as well as the 30,500 that have been issued, and the 3,000 to 4,000 that will come from the 221G cases, on top of that, there's another 16,000 people who are scheduled in in July and August already, right? And so if you add all of those numbers up, if everybody, I mean, this won't happen, but if everybody in August and July was issued, then they would already be exceeding 50,000 visas used up, right? Now, in reality, some people in August, some people in July won't show up for their visas, for their interviews. Some people will get refused finally. Some people will go on to 221G and so on. So in reality, we're not running out of visas yet. But I am trying to explain to you that we are getting to the point where they're within distance, striking distance of being able to meet the global cap. So with what happened last month, a pretty good performance in terms of scheduling interviews, and what has happened this month in terms of scheduling interviews, they've scheduled already a lot. 3,500 2NLs have been sent so far for August interviews. So the government are doing everything that they needed to do, that I was hoping they would do, in order to get towards the 55,000 visa quota. So they're not going to underfill, right? They could. They're not going to underfill through a mistake, put it like that. They could underfill through choice, but there's no reason why they couldn't hit the cap if they want to. So the question will be, how many more interviews will they arrange between now and the end of the month? So we could see the number of 2NLs go from about 3,500, where it is now, to about 4,000. I think that's probably realistic. I think that will happen. We'll see another few hundred interviews being scheduled. And then what will be remaining for September? In September, I don't think they need to schedule as many interviews in September as they have done in August, or perhaps even in July. In July, they scheduled 3,700 cases. So I think we're going to see them schedule something like, another 400 or 500 cases between now and the end of this month. And then probably 2,500 to 3,000 cases in September. Something in that range is what I expect. If they suddenly went lunatic, they went crazy on us, and they lost their minds, then they could overschedule September and get us into a position like we saw in DV 2023, where there was a sort of a calamity, a disaster at the end, where they cancelled a bunch of interviews. It's technically possible that they could do that, but I doubt that they're going to do that. I would have thought that, having learned the lessons from DV 22 and 23, they would by now have better control over the number of cases they schedule in the final months of the process. Does this mean that there are no interviews left? No, that doesn't. That's not what I'm saying, right? But I have said to people, and from the very beginning or very early on, that you can roughly tell how the process is working by looking at this number. How many people in total have been scheduled? Now, the in-transit cases, which are 669, haven't been added into this number yet. And the 669 is cases, not people. And so we can assume roughly that there would be about 1,350 to 1,400 people in that 669. They're from Africa mainly, so let's go low on that. Let's say 1,300. The number of derivatives per case is lower in Africa than it is in Europe, for example. And so we should really be thinking most of these will be about 1.75 people per case. So let's say there's 1,300 or so people that we added to that. That will take us to 60,600. Okay. Now, 60,000, yeah, 60,600 thereabouts. Will be at that sort of level. I expect that number in a good year to be something between 65 at the low end, 65,000 at the low end, and 70,000 at the high end. In that range, 65 to 70,000, is the right number of people to schedule for interviews to allow for the number of refusals that are inevitable, the number of no-shows that will happen, and for 221G cases that won't have time to complete. And so you can see that they are, even before they've scheduled any more for the remainder of August, and before they've scheduled any more for September, you can see that we're over 60,000 now. We're at about 60,600 or so right now. And so they only really need to schedule something like 5,000 to 8,000 more people between now and all of the interviews in September. So if they schedule another 400 or 500 cases, which will be another 1,000 people, let's say, if they schedule another 1,000, then we'd be at 61,600 scheduled for by the end of August, and it would leave them with a target of only needing to schedule about 3,000 to 8,000 cases to be in the right ballpark. And I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's quite a bit less than 8,000 that they schedule. So we are getting to that point. We're getting to the point where they have executed well on their processes and they've scheduled well. So what does this mean? Where will the next visa bulletin go? What will happen with that? What will we see in terms of scheduling? Well, I don't really like being sort of real precise at this point of the year because we get it coming down to the wire. And I'd rather tell you to wait and see. But it is clear to me that OC and SA regions, South America and Oceania regions, are pretty much cooked. They're pretty much at the right point. There's no need to increase their visa bulletin numbers very much at all. That was the same last month as it is this month. And so I'm not expecting a big increase, if any increase, in either of those two regions. EU needs more interviews. Asia region needs more interviews, and I would expect to get some of those interviews by the end of this month for those two regions. Africa just needs to do the thing that it's doing already. It's actually doing pretty well. If you look at the number of people scheduled and the number of cases sort of already in the system, they can get to their quota with the cases already in the system. They probably need to issue some, but what that means is they don't need to increase the visa bulletin massively. I do expect a little bit of an increase in Africa, but it's not going to be a huge increase. So pretty much the numbers that I predicted back in January are actually going to be the numbers that we're going to see ending the year. It's going to be spookily close to my estimates from January in all of the regions. I think I'm going to be pretty much exact in all of them, frankly. Now, remember that what I said was that EU is going to exceed 31,000, Asia is going to exceed 17,000, and Africa, we're in the right range already at 75,000, but maybe it gets to 80,000. Those sort of numbers are going to be about where we'll end up, right? But that does mean that I'm expecting an increase in Asia. I am expecting an increase in Europe. The question is how far. Now, if you're still dreaming of Asia 40,000, going current, forget it. You're not going to see that. We're not going to see any regions go current. There's just absolutely no need for them to put any region current at this point. You can see in the data, there's no need for them to do that. So if you haven't understood that up to this point, I'm sorry, I don't know where you've been. You've obviously not been listening to me, but I'm telling you very, very clearly, there is no possibility of current. And really, there's no possibility of any region getting a big jump EU and Asia are probably where I would see the biggest increase in the next visa bulletin, simply to push their case numbers on to the point where they can issue some more of the quota. So that's where we stand. Remember, the scheduling for the month of August is not over yet. Okay, there still will be some more scheduling for the month of August. We're seeing a few cases get their 2NLs each day. There's a handful of cases, but I would expect probably by the end of next week or during the week after that, we'll see the final 2NLs sent for interviews for the month of August, and then we'll see the visa bulletin in between the 8th and the 15th of next month in July, which will be the last visa bulletin that takes us into September for scheduling. So that will be the last point. Okay, and that's it. That's where we're standing. I'm hoping that update has sort of filled you in a little bit. Go have a look at the data yourself. You can always download the file and have a look at the data for your embassy. There's a lot of information on this website from Xarthisius, so please go ahead and have a look at that, or download the data file, which is at the top of the page. There's plenty of information for you if you're interested in the data. But if not, you can just see the numbers in the summary table there, and you can get a good idea of what's happening. All right, everybody, thanks for your time today. I'll see you for the weekend for a live session, live Q&A over the weekend, so I'll see you then. All right, bye-bye, everyone.